Welcome back to Aging Boldfully. My name is Susan Rohrbach. If you've watched our previous episodes, you know that Aging Boldfully is about living fully, finding purpose, and overcoming obstacles. In retirement, which I like to consider my third chapter, is a great opportunity for us to focus on the things that matter most, wherever we are on our journey. Aging is comprised of many different elements, which we explore with our guests. During our conversations, they provide their experiences and lessons which inspire me, and hopefully they will inspire you as well. On today's show, we're going to talk about physical health, and particularly balance and mobility. Our guest today, and we're very lucky, we have experts who specialize in physical therapy and provide services to our community. With that, I'd like to introduce Chris Correnti and Winslow Woodacre.
Now, thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Chris, you have a great name, but I have to say, Winslow's Woodacre, I love it.
It's the best.
I love it, right?
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Excellent. And you loved it when you were a kid too, right?
It's always been good.
Yeah.
Never met another one.
I love it. Okay, so let's start off with you telling our viewers a little bit about yourself. So Chris, let's go with you first.
Sure. I'm Chris Correnti. I'm the owner of Physical Therapy and Balance Centers. We're located right in downtown Franklin, right next to the post office is on one side, Dean College is on the other side. We're in the old Bank of America building. So it's an 80-year-old building that we converted to a physical therapy outpatient clinic. It's 2,500 square feet. A lot of people ask if the vault's still there. And yes, the vault door is still there because it weighs over 10,000 pounds. But we've been in place for a little over a year. The town and community has been great. The response to us being there and people looking to come in and get physical therapy has been absolutely wonderful. Specifically, we focus on three things. We focus on orthopedic, neurologic, and vestibular therapy. And orthopedic is, with anything from your ankles to your neck. You break an ankle, knee replacement, hip replacement, frozen shoulder, we work on that. Mm-hmm. Neurological therapy is, think about patients that might have Parkinson's or brain injury, post-stroke, or even MS. We see those patients. And then last is vestibular, which is balance. A lot of people think it's vertigo, things along those lines. Because of specializing on vestibular therapy, we have a lot of the senior community that comes by. I would say almost half of our patients are 65 years or older. We've had some patients that come in that are over 95, but they come in to improve or address a balance or mobility issue that they have.
Mm-hmm. All right, Winslow, what about you?
I'm Winslow Woodacre. I'm a local...
Franklinite?
Yeah, Franklinite. And I've been here since 2013. Yeah. And with Chris's help, we started Fyzical here in Franklin, so helping the community. I've been a physical therapist since 2013 as well. Mm-hmm. And I am the clinical director at Fyzical.
Excellent. So let's start off by talking about why are we here today? What do you think the focus of this conversation is?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. It's what is balance and mobility first? What should you be looking for around your balance and mobility? And then the third one is, when should you be asking for help around anything around your balance and mobility, whether it's preventative, maintenance, or you have an issue that has to be addressed. But balance and mobility are a huge part of our lives. There's a lot that you can do to prevent it. There's some specific things you should do if you have a fall, and a lot of people have falls, and Winslow will speak to that in a minute, especially in the senior community. But the real important news here is falls are preventative. Mobility can get improved, and if you do have a fall, you can recover from it, and you can get back to really living your life.
Well, I think we should start on about prevention. And we were talking earlier about the fact that cardio and strength training are really the building blocks, right? I mean, they're so important. But I think in the background, people don't really think about balance or mobility until maybe they're doing an activity at home and all of a sudden they say, wow, my balance isn't what it used to be. Or they're at the gym and they try to do something on one leg and it's like, wow, I really need to work on this. So from a prevention point of view, what would you recommend people start doing?
So I think the most important thing is consistency. So you need to be consistent in something. If it is walking, if it is strength training, whatever makes you tick, I think that's the most important thing. But then past that, we need to work on more specific balance things, like you mentioned single leg balance. If you're going to put on your pair of pants, can you do it without sitting down? That's a big, I guess, sign that you might have something else underlying that would be problematic. So if you can't do that, then that might be a time to focus on doing a little bit more balance specific training. We'll get into it a little bit later, but balance is comprised of different elements. So if you take your vision away, you're going to have a lot more of a challenge balancing. So if you do some eyes closed balance at home, that kind of thing could be important to do.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
So, so then you get to a point where something physically is happening, right? And you don't have any control over your balance. How prevalent is that in the senior community?
So unfortunately, in seniors or people over 65, 1 in 4 people will fall in the year. Now, if you break that down, that's 16 million people, with 3 million of those having to go to the emergency room and 1 million of those people having to be hospitalized for longer periods of time. So that number is quite high.
So, and the other thing too around the falls is just not the act of falling, but it's also the downstream implications. When you fall, you might put your hand out and then you could break your wrist.
Sure.
If you fall and you land on your hip, you could be breaking your hip, things along those lines. So it's just not the fall and the act of falling, but it's also the byproduct of the fall. So it really speaks to why prevention and maintenance and things along those things are so important, because of the really negative things that could come out of falling.
Right. And, basically what your life looks like if you fracture something. And certainly hip fractures are very serious with falls.
Yes, they are. So they're the number one, not to be morbid, but the number one sign or reason for passing away. With hospitalizations and that kind of thing.
Right. Okay, so what are the causes of balance issues?
So how about I just explain kind of what comprises balance to begin with?
Yep,
so
go ahead.
Balance is made up of proprioception, which is our ability to sense joint position, what's going through what sensations coming through our feet. It's also comprised of vision, so we're taking in and interpreting what's happening in our surroundings and kind of like checking to make sure that what we're feeling is correct to what we're seeing. And then inside the inner ear is sensing different kinds of movement. So are we moving up and down? Are we turning right or left? And then all of those things are compiled to keep you upright by the cerebellum. So that's what comprises balance. And then if you have an issue anywhere along those lines, you might have balance challenges. So as we age, we all know that our vision kind of goes down a little bit. So we're having more trouble taking in that input, and then that's adding to the processing challenge.
Yeah, we like to talk about it's those 3 things that Winslow just said. If you ever see someone that's walking and they're shuffling, it's the reason they're shuffling is because they want to feel the ground, right? So that's a red flag for us in the sense of that's how they get in the sensory part. But as Winslow said, there's a sensory part, there's a vision part, and then it's your ears, right? And a lot of people, they just say, oh, it's vertigo. I automatically have vertigo. Not necessarily always vertigo, but those three things have to work in harmony. Because if one of them is not, you're all of a sudden you're out of whack, and that's what can cause some of your balance issues. So when people come in, and that's part of the assessment that we do, we're looking at all three of those things so that we can identify what has to be addressed so that we can get you to a better place around balance.
One other thing with aging, the inner ear vestibular system does deteriorate, and we're not like manufacturing more of that. So that is one thing that I know people say, as we age, we're going to not balance as well. And that is somewhat true because that system is a little bit weaker. And then as far as sensation, so joint sensation is changed with like a joint replacement. So you have your knee replaced, you might not have as great a proprioception knowing where your knee is in space. So that's going to challenge with your foot placement and that kind of thing. Or if you have diabetes and peripheral neuropathy, which creates a challenge with sensing the ground, you're going to have trouble sensing what the ground feels like. So all of these things makes like you staying upright and balanced more of a challenge.
So, all right. So given that, what does the continuum of care look like in terms of, before PT? What are the things that someone could do at home or at the gym? And then knowing that they need some further treatment. And what do you do in terms of your methods and techniques with treating people?
So before treatment is begun, I'm going to always stay as active as you can. If it's something as simple as walking, cooking in your house, getting up and going to see the neighbor, that kind of thing is simple enough. If you want to add into that, do a little bit longer walk, like maybe a half a mile walk to the end of the block, that kind of thing. Or maybe some simple functional strengthening things like getting in and out of a chair, try not to hold on, taking the stairs if you're able. These things are just going to build functional strength. And then fast forward to you maybe had a joint replacement and you need to come in for physical therapy specifically based around that ailment. Then we develop a plan that focuses on the knee, but then also combines in balance specific and functional things to get back to your lifestyle. If it's a fall that you had, we need to check that you're okay, make sure nothing else happened, and maybe tend to that first. So if you had a broken wrist, like Chris mentioned, from the fall, then we tend to that first and then try to prevent further falls with specific exercises that target your weakness.
So that's specific to balance is what you're saying.
Yeah, and it could be different for you or I.
Right.
Maybe you have trouble clearing your foot over a curbing, or you have trouble
Getting in and out of a chair.
Getting in and out of a chair. Those plans might look a little bit differently.
Sure.
There'd be some overlap, but it's going to be what's important to you and where your limitations come from.
Yeah, each plan of care is definitely unique to each individual. I think the part that we're really proud of and separates us is we have a harness system. So it's called Solo Step, and it allows us to say that we're a fall-free environment when we're treating certain patients. And what it is, it has a tracking system that goes along the ceiling, has a rope that comes down, and it goes into a harness. And when our patients go into this, it holds up to 700 pounds. So it's impossible for someone to fall. And what that really allows us to do is do certain treatments that it would be a challenge to do in other environments because people could still fall. In this situation, they can't. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do while people are in a harness and the sensation that they go through.
Yeah, so they've found through the research that actually training balance to failure is a better technique because it's going to overload that system and train you to prevent that from happening again. So if we looked at balance simply, there's like kind of 3-step phase to when you get off balance. So first is going to be your ankles are going to be taking up some of that play so you don't fall over. If it's a larger perturbation, your hips are going to take up that. And then if you get pushed even harder or fall or stumble further, you're going to have to step to prevent that fall. So if we can actually work that end of the spectrum and figure out those pathways, you're going to be safer in your community with balance tasks.
Yeah, what we find, it really improves our patients' confidence because they can actually feel the sensation of falling and how to engage different parts of their body to prevent it without the fear of falling at all. And that's something that's really unique because a lot of our patients have come in, they have fallen, and we actually see it in their eyes, the concern that they have. They're like, I do not want to relive this again. So they have hesitancy in how much they would put forward in their treatment. But then they get in this harness and they know they can't fall. They'll push themselves even harder. And some of the best feedback we get from our patients is, you worked me out really hard. I'm tired or I'm sweating. And we're like, great. And they're like, well, that's never happened to me before. And we're like, perfect. Why do you think that happened? Well, I'm doing stuff I've never done before. Great. That means you're activating certain parts of your body that you haven't activated in a while. And that comes into everything from the recovery to the preventative to anything else so that you don't fall again. That our patients just get really conditioned to wearing it. When they walk in, they go automatically over to the harness section. They start putting the harness on, and they're ready to rock and roll, and they're going through it because they're looking forward to doing these activities with no fear of falling. And I think the interesting thing is, sometimes the patients are doing it, and they're saying, I don't know if I'm making too much progress. And we'll say to them, okay, hey, you're at that point where we're going to do a progress update. And when you first came in, it took you 18 seconds to do a certain activity. Well, you've come in for X number of sessions. You went from 18 seconds to now it only took you 12. And they didn't even realize it because it's just part of the active life of what they're doing day in and day out that they didn't realize they're making these improvements. Well, the harness has really helped them with their confidence in activating certain parts of their body that they're making these strides and these improvements. So it's very gratifying for them. It's very gratifying for us. And we just see their balance improve quite often because of it.
So I know you did a remote with Steve Sherlock,
yeah,
right? And people can watch that on YouTube. I think that was a great example of the harness and how you employ it. So, I mean, they have the sensation of falling, but do you also teach them how to catch themselves, I'm assuming, right?
So with the harness in use, I'm there guarding and trying to push them to that extent where they might stumble or have to catch themselves. But we're not going through like a tuck and roll situation. But then I know a lot of people come in and ask if I was to fall at home, how do I get up? So a lot of times we work on that or work towards that as an option for if they've fallen and they're not injured in the fall, how to get off the ground.
Right.
Which simply looks like getting to something that's solid.
Yeah.
If it's a chair, a cabinet that doesn't move, or a countertop, and then kind of getting into a lunge position, and then kind of pushing yourself up.
Right.
Now, for a lot of people that we see, that might be something that's down the road, and we need to work on some prerequisites to get to that point.
Right. Right.
And I would say, well, we're talking about getting up after a fall. There's also some patients that have come in and have said, I like to garden, so I'm down on my hands and knees a lot, but I'm struggling just to get up. So we also do work around that and teaching people how to effectively get up, how do they engage the body a certain way, whether it's sequences or activating certain parts, muscles and things along those lines. So, there's fall prevention, there's fall recovery, but there's also just the act of getting up, and that's around mobility. So there's balance, and there's mobility, there's all these different types of activities that we're working with our patients on so that they can just enjoy their life as much as they possibly can.
So what I like about your practice, though, is that you assist people before they have a problem. If they can come in and say, hey, I'm gardening and
Yeah.
I'm having trouble getting up. You also counsel those types of people too, don't you?
Yeah, and I'll address that for a quick second. I'll hand over to Winslow. What a lot of people don't realize is balance therapy is almost always covered by their insurance. And we take all the major insurances. So when people call and they ask us and they say, I'm not sure about my balance, I'd like to get it better, things along those lines, is my insurance covered? The answer is yes. And if you're on Medicare, you don't even need a referral from your doctor. We need to send a plan of care to your primary physician as updates, but you don't need a referral to come in, and it'll be covered by Medicare. So that's a big part of the senior community asking that question. Just say, hey, is this something I can do, and what's covered or not covered?
Right.
So that's check that. We're good on that front. And then, we go through a whole assessment. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about how we do the assessment.
Yeah, a lot of times it's just could be a check-in, right? I'm having these issues or questioning if I have these issues. Maybe one of my friends fell and I'm nervous that I might fall. So some people come in with that question of what it looks like for them. So we'll take them through a bunch of different tests, and at times we've done this, gone through the full evaluation, and got to say to them, hey, you're doing great. Whatever you're doing, keep doing, because you have good balance. You're able to clear your feet when you walk. You're not having challenges with stairs, that kind of thing. And so, just keep that going. Then on the other end of the spectrum, some person might come in and we ask them to get onto one foot, and they grab for the wall, they grab for me, because they can't lift that foot up. Just not being able to lift up the foot for that amount of time, we're going to have trouble with just walking from here to the kitchen, that sort of thing. Yeah. So those two individuals, one might have a longer stay in physical therapy. One might need a couple pointers to make sure that their house is safe, make sure that there's no throw rugs, that kind of thing, and then they can be free and on their way.
Yeah, how to maneuver stairs, how to get in and out of chairs when there's not armrests on the chairs. So those are all the different types of things that we're trying to educate people on, in the sense of how do you improve your balance, and there's got to be some ownership by the patient also, in the sense of what they're doing at home, that they're activating certain things, but they're also practicing other things. But also, a lot of it is just preventative, because we don't want those downstream implications of, broken wrists or hip issues or things along those lines. Those could really turn your life upside down.
Consistency is key.
Absolutely.
Just consistently doing these things sort of every day.
Yep.
What about that 5-second rule? You had off camera and we had talked about a 5-second rule.
Yeah, so a lot can happen in 5 seconds. And if you cannot balance on your foot for 5 seconds, it shows a much greater risk of fall. But if we think about putting on that pair of pants, if we tried to do it without sitting down, it would take about 5 seconds. So being able to stay stationary on one foot with the eyes open in a safe environment, not where you could fall, is a good test to put yourself through to see, hey, maybe I do have an issue. Obviously, the more you can hold it on one foot, the better. If I have to stop timing because we get bored, then I think that's a really good sign. If you're holding it for 30 seconds, a minute, but definitely a 5-second cutoff for fall risk.
And the other thing I like about your practice is the metrics that you use too, that, shows a person's progress. And I think it's awesome that you utilize that. So what about, we just talked about fear, because I think fear is a big thing. Once you fall, you sort of don't want to take another risk, right? And you almost become paralyzed and your life looks different.
Right.
So do you have a metric as it relates to confidence?
Yeah, so one of the biggest metrics that we take for these patients with balance issues is the activities of balance confidence. So they come in day one and they've answered this list of questions. How confident are you in not falling during these specific tasks? It gives us a net score. and that's your overall confidence. Maybe you come in and you're 26% confident that you're not going to fall. It includes stairs, walking a mile, that sort of thing. And then that's our baseline, right? So we go through a plan of care, we work on the different elements in there and where your limitations are. And then in 10 visits, we do a reevaluation. You fill out that same paper again, and it tells us where your confidence is now. And many times people's confidence will spike up. I like to see that at least over 75%, maybe even 80%. But if we're moving that needle in the positive direction, that shows a lot of positivity.
Yeah. And, I think in regards to that one, that's more, it's confidence, right? So it's a little bit more anecdotal. It's what you think and things along those lines. But confidence is a big part of it. Then the second part is actually having the empirical evidence of us using stopwatch and testing you and having you go through different obstacles and things along those lines where maybe you weren't able to do them in the past. So I think it's a little bit of the confidence, which is anecdotal, and then the empirical, which is the data. And when we share that with our patients and they see the difference that it's making, that confidence goes up even more. Sure. which is absolutely great. I mean, it's hey, this is what I'm feeling, but this is what the data is telling me also.
Right.
And that's a big part of what we do. Yeah, everything gets measured.
Now, let's just cover one more thing as it relates to falls and the fear. So, do you have a suggestion for someone, a family member, where a family member falls? And how does that family member assist them?
So I think the first thing to do in that situation is check to see if they're okay. Are there any broken bones that we need to assess? Do we need to call 911? After that, we can check with them and help them however they feel like they need it. They'll be able to tell us best. So if there's no significant bumps and bruises that need further assistance, I would say definitely try to get something solid to them to help them pull themselves up onto.
Right.
If you could just crawl towards
A bench.
a bench if you're outside, or a countertop inside is very stable. It's not going to pull over, because that's the other risk.
Right.
And then additionally, you don't want to put yourself at risk in trying to help this loved one, because then now you're not able to assist in getting further help if needed. So definitely don't put yourself at further risk.
Right.
But
I think the takeaway is to get into a stable surface that you can put pressure against safely, so that you can put some leverage against to raise yourself back up, to help the person that fell get back up, is the most important thing.
And to ask them how you can help them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, just assess the situation first.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if any doubt, call 911.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's talk about mobility. Tell our viewers what mobility is and how does it connect to balance?
So functional mobility is our ability to get around our community and interact with it. So if that's in the kitchen, actually being able to get into a cabinet and reach that top shelf. Is it to get to the basement to work on the laundry? That sort of thing is a component to mobility, but being balanced is a very important aspect of the mobility. If you don't feel stable when you reach up and look overhead and you feel like you're going to fall, then you're not going to do that. You're going to avoid those activities.
Right.
In addition to the balance, posture is a big component. So unfortunately, a lot of us get slumped in our seats, forward shoulders, rounded head. Gravity is not helping us in this situation, but then it actually puts us at a less mechanical advantage. So now we can't reach up and overhead because our shoulders are getting in the way, or our thoracic spine is getting in the way. So we need to think about kind of being in an upright, not overly aggressive upright position, but just upright to maximize our ability to reach and lift. That sort of thing.
Yeah, we call it stacking. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about how your body kind of stacks upon itself, so you have that good posture.
Yeah, so the body was designed pretty well, and what we want is our lumbar spine to be a little bit of a lordosis, a little bit of a kyphosis, and then a little bit of a cervical extension. So we're kind of like holding all of that weight in a stack. It puts us at an advantage when we're like lifting something from the ground, or even just sitting for a prolonged period of time. You could be driving for extended periods of time and your head is way far forward. You're going to get some neck pain.
I'm thinking of how I'm sitting.
Yeah, we're all guilty of it.
Yeah.
Not specifically to you, but we're all guilty.
Yeah.
We get drawn into that computer screen and we start looking. Maybe our eyes are going a little weak and we need to bump up the size on the screen, but we start looking like this.
Right.
But then you're going to be having some neck pain. So yeah, we need to be kind of as upright, but not aggressive in that position.
So are there ways that we could, because you just mentioned about posture, but in terms of mobility, are there ways that we can improve it? See, I mean, when I think of mobility, and I could be completely washed up on this one, I think of my joint mobility, like my ankle mobility, to make sure it flexes in a way that it's functional, because I've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, that ankle mobility is key in terms of preventing falls. So, I mean, I don't know if you've heard that, but, in terms of stretching, does that help? Things along those lines.
There are definite benefits to stretching. And as we do get older with other things like arthritis coming in, making joints stiffer, yes, we want to maximize the range in there.
Right.
But there are individuals that are overly mobile and they don't necessarily need to stretch a joint.
I see.
So it depends on your situation.
Right.
Yes, joint mobility is a component of like a functional mobility, but we're looking at that as more of the ability to move around and complete different tasks that might come into your day.
Okay.
Yeah, I think without a doubt what you're talking about is, try to put in simplistic terms as range of motion. Right?
Exactly.
As we get older, the range of motion changes. We wake up a little stiffer in the morning.
Yes.
Right? It feels like it takes a little bit longer in the day to loosen up and things along those lines. So is our mobility a little bit different in the morning compared to the afternoon? How do we improve that by stretching and just working our way through it and things along those lines? So I think there's without a doubt some key body parts for us to be aware of. And I think you gave voice to it earlier. It's your ankles, it's your knees and your hips. That you want to make sure that you have that as much range of motion as possible so that you have the best mobility that you can. So it prevents falls. Yeah.
And also the other injuries that might have occurred, like we'll just keep using knee replacement as a simple example. But if you never gain back full mobility, range of motion in your knee following knee replacement, you might have perpetual issues with descending stairs because you don't have enough knee flexion to go down that step completely. So you're going to be potentially adapting how you go down those steps, which is then going to potentially lead you to being at a greater fall risk. So yeah, it's hard to say if there's any one specific thing that people should be working on.
But it's interesting. We think about mobility. There's this lower body, which plays a big role in balance, but we think about upper body also in the sense of around mobility. It's like we see a number of patients that come in that have frozen shoulder, right? Therefore, they can't reach, and if they can't reach, or if they're compensating in other ways, it can create neck issues. It can create upper back issues, lower back issues, things along those lines. So all of a sudden, are you because you have an underlying issue, are you compensating in a way that's creating a problem that's even worse? So, when we look at it, we're looking at saying, okay, like I said earlier, they come in, they meet with the team, they're doing a full evaluation to understand what is your mobility challenges, what is your range of motion, what is the underlying issue, and how do we put together a plan of care so that we can improve on that.
Yeah, and what your primary complaint is too, if it's in a physical therapy environment. What are you having trouble doing? and how can we help?
Do you want to consult on me right now?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Maybe off camera I can
Yeah.
ask you some questions. I mean, I do have a knee replacement, and I think I do pretty well. You know, I was telling Chris I did like 11-mile walk the other day. So
Excellent.
I think, you know, not to brag, but
It's a lot to brag about.
Yeah.
I would argue most people cannot do 11-mile walk.
That's impressive.
So you're the
Yeah.
top 1% probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I walk with a group of people that, you know, push me and walk fast, and, you know, you have to be competitive and keep up with them. So
Love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, basically what you're saying is you really try to treat sort of the whole body, because, you know, if someone comes in with a problem on the left, maybe they're compensating in such a way it's causing an issue on the right, I would imagine.
Yeah, and they haven't noticed that.
Right, exactly.
Right? They haven't
Yeah.
noticed that their right side has been favored for so long that now their left side actually has more of the problems, and we need to address that as well.
Right, right. So I usually ask at the end here for maybe one thing that you want to recommend, or even more than one. It's totally up to you. In terms of, you know, balance and mobility, posture, you know, what are the things that are important to you that you would recommend to someone?
So someone that's at home watching this, I would just first off tell them to do something that they know they're going to be able to accomplish consistency. Meet that goal first. Don't set your goals that you're going to walk 11 miles tomorrow. Set it like I'm going to be consistent with walking a half a mile every day, and pretty soon that's going to become a mile.
Right.
It was a nice day. I'm going to go a little bit longer today. So I think if you can set yourself up for initial success and consistency with what you do, that's going to be the most important thing. And then if it's balance specific, I would work on maintaining some level of single leg balance that lets you accomplish daily tasks. If it's stepping up and over the side on your bathtub so that you can get into the bathtub, that requires single leg balance in that time where you're stepping up and over.
Right.
So make sure that you can do those type of things.
Right.
And then also set yourself up for success from a safety component. Make sure that your house is safe from fall hazards, trips. Have bars that are installed if you are having trouble in the shower or on the stairs. Make sure all of those things are in place as well. We want to prevent the falls as much as possible.
And, you know, the scatter rugs are a risk because of people not lifting their foot up properly. Is that what it comes down to? Yeah.
Yep. Not getting enough foot clearance, maybe misstep a little bit and
Right.
it takes you out. Or if you have an assistive device, walker is the biggest culprit in that,
Right,
catching
right.
on that rug, and then now it becomes not just an inch lip, it's 6-inch lip that you have to
Right. Right.
trip over.
And vision issues are also, especially going downstairs.
Yeah. Or is it darker? What's the environment like? Is it a dark restaurant?
Yeah.
I don't usually do stairs. They're
Yeah.
long and short, which is uncommon step pattern to do. So you don't know the timing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add that we haven't covered?
I feel like we covered balance pretty well.
Yeah, I'll kick it off and just saying that while falls happen more often in the senior community, they are preventable. And I think part of it is just getting educated of why. And a lot of it has to do with your balance. And we talked about mobility and things along those lines. So understand the key aspects of balance and why you might have good balance and why you don't. What you can do to work on it, and when do you need to reach out and ask for a little bit of help so that your balance can improve. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there that people can watch, but it's overwhelming. You just don't know exactly what's right for you. So I would suggest that you reach out to an expert. It could be your primary physician, it could be an athletic trainer, or it could be a physical therapist. All those folks are qualified to give you some insight on what your situation is and how we can improve on your balance.
And, you know, I think the message too is that there's hope in it as well. I mean, you
Totally.
can improve to the point where you can resume your life again, right? It doesn't have to be something that now you're so afraid of it, you sort of retract from really living the life that you had. I mean, that's my sense from the both of you.
You know, I'm smiling over here because when we see some of our patients coming through and how happy they are because they've crossed this new milestone and their confidence is so much higher, and you just see the joy that they're having and what it means for their life and things along those lines. It's incredibly rewarding. So not to say it happens for every patient, but there are a lot of patients that we definitely see improvement with, and it's great that we get to be a part of that journey that they go on because it's definitely possible.
And I also want to mention that people shouldn't be afraid to ask for help, even if they're not quite sure. We're always going to meet them where they are and like lead them in the right direction. If it's figuring out a new routine right now or putting them to somebody else that could help them in their current situation, on either end of the spectrum, I think it's always good to ask.
Yep.
So,
excellent.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it.
We had a great time.
Excellent. Well, that's our show today. Thank you for tuning in to Aging Boldfully. My name is Susan Rohrbach. Remember, age is just a number. It's living boldfully that makes life worth living. Make it a great day.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.